Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey for the last several years. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind our logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror and Halloween genre, but does phenomenal commission pieces of any type. So tonight, Brian Baker, you guys have seen him on the show before. I've known him for a few years from public events and such that I used to do, and he's just done so much since then. My God, time just flies. Anyway, you guys will know him from Superstitious Times. He's written his own book, and it's called Eerie Whispers, Exploring Canada's Reluctant Relationship with Its Ghostly Lore. Of course, it would be Canada, who's just all funky with the ghosts. Why not? Time to catch up with the rest of the world. No, actually, I think we're doing pretty good, but it's definitely interesting, and I can't wait to hear. He's interviewed a lot of people for this, so I can't wait to hear what he's got to say. So without further ado, welcome, Bubbly. I know. Here we are. We're good. It's been a while. Anyway, let's welcome everyone, Brian Baker, to the show. Hello.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're good. How are you?
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby is good. I'm with that. So, man, you've been on before. We've talked about great things. You've always got, something going on. And of course, Superstitious Times, great articles that have come out of that. And you've come on and shared with us and our listeners. But this is your book. This is a really big deal.
So people tell me. I'm still a bit numb to that. I don't know. It's starting to kind of sink in, like after all the work and the editing and and much appreciated sharing of the cover and the links and stuff like that from a lot of the paranormal community.
This one?
That one, yes.
There it is. Yay, there it is. Eerie Whispers, Exploring Canada's Reluctant Relationship with Its Ghostly Lore. It's a great cover.
Yeah, no, they did a great job. I kind of gave them the idea of using the blue and the yellow scheme on a silhouette. It's Craig Derrick Castle in Victoria, of course.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great building, and it has a great stained glass window of Leda on the Swan. There's a lot of great stuff there. If you ever get a chance,
it should be your choice, right? It's your book, and it's the window into the book. You see the cover, and it's like, I really want to read this. Look at this. I wonder if he writes about this place.
Yeah, no, it was pretty awesome. I wanted to kind of put a iconic Canadian haunt on there. I know some people associated with Craig Derrick like to play down the whole ghost lore, which just plays into the whole theme of the book, of course, of Canada's underground river of interest. I think when that article I wrote for the Superstitious Times, I used that analogy to kind of Canada, there is interest in the paranormal in Canada and ghosts, but it's always kind of pushed down, subverted, kept only when it's socially acceptable. Yeah, suppressed. Yeah.
Yeah. So what made you decide that? I mean, you knew you knew a book was coming at some point. You don't write as much as you write and not actually do a book. So funny, I'm sure the rest of us all were not surprised when you wrote the book. You're probably the one that's the most surprised. But what made you choose this topic specifically? I mean, out of all the things that you write about, what was it about this topic?
Yeah, I think my archaeology and anthropology background really kind of factors into what I do with the Superstitious Times and this book, just exploring the Canadian culture around ghosts. And I think that really factored into it. The article that I interviewed you for with regards to the challenges investigators face in Canada and getting into locations that have alleged like weird goings on. Yourself, Morgan Knudsen out from Edmonton, Elliot Van Dusen from Nova Scotia, and Jason Hewlett from the interior of BC.
Yes.
And that kind of started it. I had a colleague, a friend I umpired baseball with out in the burbs of Toronto back in the 90s, Kwame Fraser, and he sat with me. He wanted me to write a book about the paranormal. And originally it was going to be cryptozoology. And I was doing some of the interviews for that. And then pandemic hit. So,
it ruined a lot of lives.
From one writer to another.
it was a challenge. I was working from home for the Canadian Press at the time. Or PMNA, Page Masters. That was kind of, it fell the wayside. But while the pandemic was going on and I was doing these articles and chatting with people, I realized the common theme was that Canadians tend to avoid talking about it out of fear of being considered woo, or out of fear of losing their job, because they kind of hold on to these beliefs, I guess. But and then that started kind of developing book, and I wanted to explore more about ghosts, not just with the haunted locations, but within our pop culture as well.
No, I mean, I think I always say, we tend to be, we never came out of the Ghostbusters era. I think that when that happened, we just sort of kind of got on the bandwagon a bit, which was like the 80s. Because before that, I mean, I remember growing up and it was always that we don't want to talk about those things, even though I came from a very aware family, a father in denial, but a mother and family members, extended family members who were all aware and would talk about it. It was like, it was all about what other people would think. Well, we don't want the neighbors to think we're strange. We are. It's okay. No. I mean, we really don't want them to know that. Okay. So, it's suppressed, I think is the easiest way to put it. But once it took off, we started getting shows like Scariest Places on Earth. Like that was, right? That show was out of the UK, I believe it was. And then Most Haunted. And I mean, everybody seemed to be ahead of us. And we were all just like in awe, those of us with interest. But we still never did anything on our own here.
Yeah, well, I think the first one I remember was Girly Ghost Hunters, and Dana Newkirk was on that show back then in the early aughts, and I think that was the first kind of Canadian investigative show of a location. Before that, we had Creepy Canada.
Well, I know. I did 4 episodes of Creepy.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a book too, isn't there, with Creepy Canada?
There were all kinds.
Yeah, Terry Boyle hosted it for the first couple of seasons, and another gentleman took over. But it was that was kind of like that key thing in Canada. And growing up in the 80s, as you mentioned, Ghostbusters, that glut of pop culture that was there. and it started with the syndication of In Search Of. You had Unsolved Mysteries, throwing in a few paranormal stories. And then the 90s, you had Sightings, X-Files, Sci-Factor.
See, those big shows did it, I think, right? It finally brought it because they were filmed. I mean, Chris Carter filmed. I know some of X-Files here, but most certainly Millennium, he filmed here.
Yeah.
That was a big one. So, we had a little something to call our own, even though it really wasn't.
Well, right. I know Poltergeist The Legacy was a Canadian production as well.
Oh, yeah?
So I remember that show. That was quite, I would always laugh because the one character would pull his gun and like, what are you going to shoot at? You're dealing with ghosts. Like, come on, like what's going on here? But, Helen Shaver was in that show with, I think it's Derek DeLint, who was the cellist from 3 Men and a Baby.
That's right.
Yeah. I love that film.
Yeah.
That was a while ago. I always remember that scene where Tom Selleck is talking with him and he goes, "Doodle, baby doodle." And then Tom Selleck's trying to figure out what the guy is trying to say. But I digress.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And then
Twilight here.
Oh God, I can't. Yeah, I can't. But you know what I did as Carrie mentions, the hilarious House of Frightenstein.
Frightenstein, yeah.
We were just with Mitch Markowitz on Sunday, actually.
Oh, nice.
Super hippie. Yeah. We know him well. He was at a celebration of life that we were all at. So, and of course he, took the stage and, just went total hilarious House of Frightenstein on us all. But he's got the best stories. But that I think also because as kids, this was way back. This wasn't the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hilarious House.
Yeah, that was late 70s, early 80s. It was syndicated. I remember watching it first thing in the morning.
Yeah. So see, that goes way back too. And that one we can say is ours. We claimed Vincent Price and kept him after that one.
I think all countries all over the world do that. Yeah, Vincent Price. Romania, he's ours.
Yeah, we all fight over Vincent Price.
Oh, the voice.
Yeah, but So you started, I guess, talking to people and interviewing people, and what was, the consensus with everything? Like, is it the whole country that's just kind of bashful, or some areas more than others, or?
Well, it's funny. I've had conversations about this with folks, and they find certain parts are less inclined to talk. But I found the earliest settlements were more open about the paranormal. So the Maritimes, Quebec, and as you progress west, there's a little more hesitancy. But I found the North very interesting. When I was writing it and researching it, I think Canada's North doesn't get a lot of credit. There's a lot of good kind of haunted locations that you wouldn't expect, especially Rankin Inlet has a haunted fire hall.
Oh, Big Inlet? Is that what you just said? Oh, that's where they had one of the original sawmills up there. I investigated it, and it was property that was haunted as heck because it was some resort when I was invited up there, and it was insane. So you're right. It's just this tiny little inlet. It was like a ghost town nearby, like with a decrepit cemetery. And
is that the one they left you? They just left for the night? Is it that location, or is that a different one?
That's probably a different one.
Yeah, because I remember you telling a story of one that they just left you there, and you and another person were on your own.
Oh yeah, no, that was
that one.
A whole different place. That was near Huntsville, Muskoka. Oh yeah, that was a haunted lodge, also in Muskoka, Brian. So yeah, you're right. North doesn't get any real credit for its places. So sorry, carry on. I had
I was. I mean, there's a lot of locations in Yellowknife. I spoke with an investigator, Andrew Silk, about Yellowknife, and chatted with John Firth about the Caribou Hotel, of course, up in the Yukon, Carcross.
Wow.
then, we got, of course, Dawson City with the gold rush, the Klondike, all that. So there's a lot of really interesting parts of Canada that don't really kind of get enough attention, especially Frank Slide, where you can hear people still, and allegedly along where the mountain kind of collapsed and wiped out the whole city, or the town, sorry.
Wow.
So that's some pretty interesting nuggets, not just the paranormal, but the history too. And learning about, my biggest question that rose from this was so many hotels that were built by the Canadian Railway are haunted, but the current owners, which most of them are owned by Fairmont, don't like talking about it.
They are now, yes.
So that's okay. That makes sense, because any Fairmont you go to, even in the States, like I was next door to one in Boston, is haunted.
That's weird. It's
severely haunted. If you're sensitive and you just walk by the front doors, you feel that pull dragging you in. So they didn't want to talk about any of this.
I know some of the locations they bring in the ghost stories to be shared internally.
Yeah.
So Algonquin Resort in St. Andrew, New Brunswick, that's a good example where they have their own ghost walk. There's a ghost tour guide who's not allowed on the property. She can do ghost tour everywhere else in St. Andrews, but the Algonquin Resort.
Wow.
That's an interesting.
That is interesting.
So, but that was one of the common threads I found through the prairies was, the Fort Garry, of course, in Winnipeg, and the McDonald in Edmonton. And then, all points in between. There's the Centennial Market in Regina, Saskatchewan that has stories with it as well. So it's all these buildings built by the railway or around the railway have this notoriety of being haunted, which I find fascinating. Of course, culminating in the Banff Springs, which is the biggest.
Right. There's so much. If you do a part 2, I'll have to connect you with a friend of mine in Saskatchewan. They have a team out there, and they get the craziest places, and they're in just like little towns and insanely haunted places. It kind of makes you wonder, like, what happened to make them just so. Some are very aggressively haunted, but again, you're looking at settlers.
Yes.
Coming in. So a question. Hello, Michael. How do the Indigenous views on spirits in Eerie Whispers contrast with Canada's reluctance to embrace the ghostly lore? And how did your archaeology background shape the exploration? Two-parter.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for the question. It's I do do a chapter completely dedicated to Indigenous Canada as well. And I spoke with Aaron Goodpipe and T. Sock out in PEI, and Georges Baudry, who's a Métis storyteller, to kind of get that aspect of Canadiana into the book. And there was a big factor. Indigenous is just, the spirits they just are. There's no debating it. There's no suppressing it. It's just part of the life. That of course was what Aaron and T shared. Aaron Goodpipe is Dakota Anishinaabe, and of course T Mi'kmaq. So that their input was greatly appreciated. And of course, I tried to touch on the Wendigo topic because
that's a touchy one, isn't it?
It is. And I know my friend Michael White, who I've spoken with in the past about the Wendigo, he mentioned it's more of the mindset where somebody loses themselves to greed and so forth, and starts to cannibalize metaphorically, and losing their kind of who they are. So I know that was one way of explaining it that he did.
Mm.
And then I know Aaron did not really want to talk about the Wendigo at all. So
Yeah, it's like asking the indigenous in the States to talk about skinwalkers. They get younger generation are pretty good, but they're very limited. The older generation don't want much to do with it. I think we encountered a Wendigo one time at an old trading post in Muskoka, and I didn't know it was a Wendigo, but it sounded like a bloody Xena war cry. And we had an indigenous medium with us, and he sat there so calmly. This was 3 a.m. We're leaving at this point, and this Xena war cry thing out from the woods comes out, and one of the people we were with at the time was like, "Load the damn car." It's like, okay, calm down. But there's this calm little psychic medium going, "That's a Wendigo." Says it just like that. Just, "That's a Wendigo."
What's
Like,
your problem?
what did you say? And I turn around and say, "Load the damn car." So you see, none of us really want much to do with it, but it makes sense for the area because with the trading post, the old Pioneer, highway, or the Pioneer routes going through there, and having a very large indigenous community, I think it's just part of their oral history. Like, they're very accustomed to things like that. It's just, we newcomers. Like, what the hell was that?
And I think there's been a lot of, like, one of the things that Wendigo, it can be discussed as a spirit, or it can be discussed as a cryptid or a creature. And I think that factors into two spheres of the paranormal, right? It's a fascinating topic. I know Jason Hewlett, who I interviewed for the book, has also he's written a more in-depth look at.
He did, yeah.
At it in an upcoming book. So it's I touch on it briefly. I talk about pop culture. So if you remember The Terror, which was a TV show that was on a few years back, they mistranslated the Tumbak, they called it. So I spoke with Ken Harper, who wrote for a lot of Northwest territories and Nunavut publications, and shared the stories of the Inuk and Inuit peoples, shamanism and so forth. That's up there, and we're talking about the belief of Sedna, and so that's the woman who was cast out of her father's boat because she was pregnant, and then she fell to the bottom of the ocean. I think this one part of the story is her fingers got cut off, and those fingers turned into the narwhal and the beluga and all that. So it was a fascinating story, and just it showed, Ken kind of illustrated how things can be mistranslated and misinterpreted through the colonial styles and stuff like that. So that's how we get Wendigo in a movie like Ravenous and stuff like that. That pale wraith-like creature that is common with the antlers or without.
Creepy.
Yeah,
they are. They're really like creepy, aggressive.
Why the antlers? Is it part?
Well, I know
part cryptid. Is it just a
What's
spirit?
A cryptid?
Like,
yeah.
Like
the first time I saw that was like artwork with Larry Fessenden's movie. So I think there's a bit of a creative liberties taking with that, me personally. But the indigenous aspect really kind of factored into that one chapter, exploring residential school survivors and the gap between generations, as you mentioned, Michelle, like the younger generation, the older generation, that gap of how much information they can share. And just I wrote an article for Haunted Magazine, which I referenced in the book as well, about how those spiritual gaps affected the spiritual beliefs of the Indigenous in Canada. But a lot of it was kept alive, not just the residential schools, but the 60s scoop as well. So those are kind of darker times in Canadian history.
Yes.
So,
do you find that in Canada it's easier? Do you find we're more accepting to cryptids than we are, let's say, to the paranormal per se, with ghosts and, demons and everything. I find people have difficulty thinking that they can project energy. It's easier for them to say, no, it was a demon. No, it was you, but that's okay. But when it comes to cryptids, Bigfoot especially, or lake monsters like Ogopogo, for example, it's easier do you find it's easier for them to take that in?
That's honestly, it's funny you're asking that question now. Depending on how this book does, I would like to write a second one addressing that very subject. And at first blush, I would say Canadians are more open to talking about cryptids or out of place creatures, like say big cat sightings in southern Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
Than other stuff. I mean, we've got the Traverse Pine gorilla in the Labrador region, Bigfoot and the West Coast, of course, and throughout all. I mean, there's so much terrain in Canada that's forested.
Yeah.
So
the black cats are many sightings down here. Even the Ministry of Natural Resources documents them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which is crazy when you think about it. It's like, wow.
I think the most recent one I remember seeing in the news was 2024. There's a large cat sighting outside of Peterborough. So, then in mountain lions were in northern regions of Ontario, and the last one I think was shot in the 1920s outside of Barrie.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's way too close.
And that's like, I think part of that, I find the sightings of anything from the thylacine in Australia to other creatures like the ivory-billed woodpecker for the folks in Louisiana. Those might be a little bit of guilt, like these animals are gone, and you're hoping that there's just one still left.
We messed that up. Yeah. I know I filmed at a place in the Niagara region, and in the stable, it was a horse ranch, and there was a story there not that long ago from when I filmed, where a mare sacrificed herself to save a foal and was killed by a black cat. And somehow the thing had wandered into part of the stables, and there's these huge claw marks that go down the inside of one of the stables, and it's still there. They've never removed it. I was able to get photos, but it was really sad, like a sad story, because it was very, very sad. Because there were witnesses to this black cat that was leaving the property, and she was just trying to protect this little foal.
Yeah, and I think the openness with cryptids as opposed to ghosts is there's something physical about cryptids. It's something physical. You can see it. You can touch it. I mean, all the blurry photos of Bigfoot, right? But there's something a little more tangible with cryptids as opposed to ghosts. But I mean, you get people in the right setting, and they will open up about their experience, or they find out that somebody like me writes about ghosts. People open up, and I think that they take that as a kind of a foot in the door to kind of open the conversation, because they know you write about it. You're open to that conversation, and you're going to be an open ear to what they have to share.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think people find strength in numbers, because you remember coming on the tours, at the castle. It's like, you have like 100 people, and everybody's, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of pareidolia. I'm sure there was a lot of stuff going on, but a lot of people were talking about experiences, and, you hear somebody saying, yeah, I thought I heard that too. Like, everybody gets in on the frenzy a little bit, which I thought was great. That I love that people felt safe being in an environment, a controlled environment with like-minded people, and because I mean, I would hear all kinds of things. And when the castle would send me on tours to Home for the Aged, or libraries, it's funny, and this will validate exactly what you're talking about in your book. I would have elderly people pull me aside and say, I have a story to tell you. They did not want anybody else. I mean, I packed the room, so there was interest, everywhere I went. But they would pull me aside and they would watch and make sure nobody was listening when they told me their story. They didn't want anybody knowing, even though they're in a room full of people who were there for the same reason. They did not want their friends or their neighbors knowing that they had had an experience.
Yeah. I think that just comes with the Canadian territory. I found, honestly, with something like ghosts, there's going to be more questions raised than answered. And that was pretty much, I mean, my friend Jeff Dupuis wrote the foreword, and he pointed that out. And by the end of the book, I'm like, yeah, I did not answer a lot of questions, but I got a good kind of cross country view of how Canadians in different parts with different histories, with different development and colonial impacts and so forth. And it just, Canadians are interested. They love a good ghost story.
As long as it's not theirs that they're telling.
Exactly. Yes.
Fear of being judged. Maybe.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that.
And my kids even roll their eyes when I say, "Oh, that place is haunted," and they'll roll their eyes.
Oh,
well, at least you're allowed to talk about paranormal.
Yeah, they're not
allowed to say anything. It's right up there with politics in my house. I'm like,
yeah.
That was growing up as a kid, and I think I've shared with my weird experience that kind of set me on this path of being interested in the paranormal. But I think growing up in a household that was very secular and very, I won't say resistant to organized religion, but my mom was very kind of we had an open dialogue growing up when I was growing up. So it was like my mom would default to the answer, well, you don't know what happens when you die. And, then we'd kind of have these, well, what do you think? We watch Unsolved Mysteries and Sci Factor or something like that. And what do you think's going on? Can that actually happen? So I think that open dialogue with my mom, and of course with the cryptids, my grandmother would send me clippings from the British newspapers.
Okay, so that's cool when you get a grandmother who does that.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Niagara region, if there were big cat sightings and they were written about in the Pelham newspaper, my grandmother would clip them out and send them to me. So I had a lot of clippings on the Beast of Exmoor, Bodmin Moor.
Did you get the Beast of the Port Robinson beast?
Probably in there, yeah.
Dog man, yeah, he's a dog man, yeah.
So
that happened after they split. So when they put in the new locks, it split everything up, and he got corralled.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh wow.
So that's interesting.
So there was a lot of that, there wasn't that aspect of organized religion in my family. Even my grandparents were very reticent to even talk about that kind of stuff, but they would entertain the uncanny. They wouldn't be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. I think if you have really staunch belief system in place, it was not to be spoken of. I mean, because I had relatives who were, but yet they were pretty open-minded. We were not practicing, Catholics by any means. I think my mother tried to guilt me into it one time. You should just go to church, just take a walk up the road. Like, you go to church. Like, that had anything against it, but it's like, no, that's not fair. but I think that that has a lot to do with things as well. You just, we had a relative who was friends with a Roman Catholic priest who was also like a theologian, and he was very open-minded, and he would try I remember having the talk when I was 14, and he would say, the time is going to come where it's everything we're going through now, a lot of this new age stuff.
Mhm.
And you're going to be talking about, crafts and extraterrestrials. And, and shortly after that, he said, they're going to start seeing signs, which are going to lead to, the rapture and end times and things like that. I'm kind of like going, yeah, I'm just kind of like going, because I want to hear this. Why? I'm 14. I've got a life to live, in my mind. But it was interesting how he was very open about it, even way back when.
Yeah, that was uncommon.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, he talked about ghosts. He talked about everything. But, that wasn't common back then.
It's highly uncommon. I was told not to come to church in the last 10 years. So that was very uncommon. And I didn't even tell him what I did. Somebody else did. But yeah. Well, he's gone now. So
yeah.
My wife, Jen, she'll often, I'll ask her about, okay, James White is having a seance. You want the second ticket? She goes, no, and don't bring anything back with you.
There you go.
My husband's he's not interested, but he doesn't want any of it around either.
Yeah. So, my wife has been very, she's kind of rolls her eyes. She's not a practicing Catholic to a degree. Like we go on Christmas Eve, and then that's about it.
The Seaneers, my priest called it, because it was Christmas, New Year's, and Easter. The Seaneers.
Oh, Seaneers.
That's what he called it.
I've heard that before. Yes,
that's what we were called. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting and trying to have my son's talking more about God because he goes to a Catholic school. So, having that conversation is a bit more challenging from where I'm coming from. But just kind of. And especially what I write about too, he's big on Mothman. My daughter's big on Bigfoot, so she likes Jessica Chobot and Mariah Mayer. So it's they're growing up with this content and what I write about.
So it'll be different for them.
Yes.
Yes.
So. That's good. Breaking a few chains.
Yeah.
It's okay to take a little bit from everything, but not everything from a little bit.
Yeah. Michael had another question. I'm just going to go up a little bit. He says, So is your focus strictly on ghostly lore, haunted history, spirits, folklore from immigrant or indigenous traditions? Because you do and nothing on extraterrestrial encounters or aerial phenomena.
It's mostly ghostly lore across Canada. I talk about non-European beliefs as well. So I interviewed a writer who wrote the book River Muma. So I discussed the Caribbean diaspora and Duppy stories and so forth. The African influence in Canada and the Jamaican influence, of course. And I spoke with a sheik in Mississauga about Muslim belief in jinn. And I spoke with a Hebrew studies scholar from McGill, not McGill, Concordia, I believe, Ira Robinson, about Shadim and Dybbuk and Jewish folklore. So I cover a lot. Something when I look at the book now, and I'm like, kind of like, how did I jam everything in there? It's almost like I shoehorn everything.
Yeah, but you did it.
I have one small little section on spiritualism and the impact that Dan Aykroyd had and his family in spiritualism.
Yes.
I talk about, Winnipeg, the influence there and the household for spiritualism. And then there's I go from BC to the East Coast. I cover the North. I cover French Canadian. I cover Anglophones, cover non-European immigrants, as well as Indigenous. So, and a lot of it's folklore. I interviewed folklorists, historians, investigators, writers who just have a fascination. So Barbara Smith, John Robert Colombo emailed me. So it's everything and anything ghosts in Canada.
I can't wait.
Yeah, definitely covered a lot of ground. How did your Toronto journalism gig spark your dive into these uncanny tales?
That's a great question.
Yeah, humble beginnings there,
Yeah.
Brian.
Well, I've always had. It's funny. This also kind of contributed to the book.
Mm.
So when I entered journalism, I kept my interest in the paranormal on the QT because as a journalist, you want to be kind of rational and logical and look at all the details before like jumping to any conclusions. But I'd be thrown a bone here and there. I mean, I did sports and entertainment reporting mostly, and then some news.
Mm.
But I think a few stories that I did, I did the Casa Loma story with you a few years back, and I did just a hypothetical about the ravines in Toronto being able to have a big cat. And I spoke with a Toronto Zoo biologist about is it sustainable? Is it logical?
Yeah.
Is it because I know in Rouge Valley they have seen there have been sightings of big cats.
There's something out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Ravines are creepy.
What's that?
Ravines, are creepy places.
Yeah, no. And Toronto's got a lot of them.
I know.
Big. Some of them are big.
I lived right across the street from one.
Oh, awesome! Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got the one up the street where I am. You walk in, and of course we can walk down to Mount Pleasant Cemetery and go down to the brickworks. But it's just amazing, and there's a lot of history in that area. Where in the Victorian era they would just use it as picnic areas, and they also picnicked in cemeteries too. So Victorians,
all the time. Yeah, Victorians were so obsessed with the whole, macabre of all of that. It's insane. You can do a show just on that stuff. They were all about it. What's your favorite story, spooky story, after collecting so many?
I have to admit I am kind of infatuated with the Banff Springs, but probably because the people at Banff Springs don't want to talk about it as much,
which makes it more
intriguing.
Yeah, it
it's
does.
like the one that you can't have, right? But I think collectively, I think the trope of the woman in white or the forlorn bride that's pervasive across Canada is what draws me in. There are several stories of a woman crying, or on her wedding day, the Banff Springs especially, where she's walking down the steps, she falls, she either breaks her neck or she gets caught on fire. The story,
it's always dire and
Niagara
just
Falls too.
Niagara on the lake has a gazebo that's allegedly visited by a woman in white. There's the St. Andrews Algonquin Resort has a forlorn bride crying in the hotel room. There's Montmorency Falls just outside of Quebec City, where during the 7 Years' War, a bride threw herself off the falls because her beau was killed at one of the battles just outside of Quebec City. So it's one of those pervasive things. And it makes me wonder, being a huge pop culture nerd, I kind of wonder if these stories sprung up after Wuthering Heights. Catherine is a ghost, and Heathcliff and the love, and the abusive relationships in that story, and I think, did that kind of taint the well a bit when we shared these ghost stories, that the Victorian Gothic literature impacted it, and pop culture now even plays off of a lot of sightings and stuff like that, with even creepypasta becoming commonplace, like Slender Man or The Rake and so forth.
Oh yeah, getting into whole like tulpas and everything else. It gets that's crazy stuff. It just goes to show you, what goes on out here collectively. Slender Man. You can throw Santa Claus onto that. Not kidding. That's a whole other strong belief in a tulpa. But do you find, because the bride, the woman in white, the bride, it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yes.
It's always, she ran down the hall, threw herself off out of a window, or just ran out of the house or the hotel, whatever the case may be, threw herself off a cliff. It's always
Off a
like
cliff,
the jilted,
Scotland.
Yeah. Yes.
the jilted bride, or just the bride who lost her groom.
Or the even in Mexico, La Llorona.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very impactful tale about a woman. Her husband cheats on her, and she drowns her two sons in the river.
Yeah.
I know they're different tellings of it, but that's kind of like the core.
Same idea. Yeah. The injured, the injured heart sort of thing. So that's
powerful.
And you see that in Japanese culture.
Yes.
You do.
The onryu.
Yeah.
So that there's so much, and like you said, it is global.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a phenomenon in itself, because it's like Wayne was saying in here. He goes, it's never the groom. It's never it's always a crying little girl. You don't get crying little lads too often. It's just like, we emotional women are little girls.
That's why I like the new Suicide Squad, because she gets all the souls that she goes after the men that killed her husband and keeps all their souls in her sword. I'm like, finally, someone who's maybe, I don't know. I never looked into it. Maybe that is a story. Who knows, right?
It's interesting. I mean, and I guess the modern pop culture reference to this woman in white in the paranormal world would be maybe the final girl in horror movies. Maybe I'm grasping at straws here, but that would be something. The pure kind of virginal female, well, not in every horror movie, but just kind of that aspect of Heather Langenkamp and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and
the older ones.
And it's just kind of that aspect, kind of painting these ghost stories. And it's like a broken telephone, and that allure of like a Catherine from Wuthering Heights and those older stories, or even more modern hauntings.
Oh yeah, I love the old stories though. Sometimes I feel like some of these places made up stuff to get people in after the Victorian times, because they knew it would bring in business, because it was more acceptable at the time.
It was big back then. I think more so than now, because it was like a different kind of movement. I mean, instead of giving gifts at Christmas, you would exchange ghost stories, and the cards were always like very macabre, and picnicking, like you say, in cemeteries, and having table tipping and seances, and it was just like way over the top, and it lasted quite a while. It's not like it lasted a year or two. I mean, it lasted at least a decade, maybe more.
It was just over a decade.
Yeah. And it came back around after World War I. I mean, I think
the seances.
Yes.
For their husbands that were lost at war. Yeah.
A great movie for that was The Awakening, which had an interesting twist in it, and it's focused on
the others.
Yeah, The Others. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that was a really good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good films out there. Do you notice in writing and in talking to people, because this is something that was always said to me whenever I did some of the tours, why don't we see modern day spirits? Why are they always like Victorian or older? Or like early 1900s? Like, what changed? Because why aren't we seeing modern day?
In my honest opinion, I think it's safer to talk about the past. Canadians are, I would honestly admit, Canadians are risk averse. I notice, the U.S., the interest in pursuing making money off of this and using the true crime and the pop culture. And if you did a Venn diagram, you'd have paranormal, true crime, pop culture, and they'd be all intersecting. Canada is a bit more, we're more driven by the history.
Yeah.
We absorb the Canadian history from these ghost stories, because the ghost stories draw us in. We learn a little bit about, say, the War of 1812, the Klondike Gold Rush, the 7 Years' War, so on, and then we're hooked, right? But I think something closer, something where people are still alive and trying to keep detached. I find you're never gonna have like anything about Leslie Mahaffey or Kristen French. It's just in poor taste, right? Or the
100%. Yeah.
Mind you, those crazy people went after Charlie Kirk right away.
Yeah, it just I mean, the Highway of Tears is another good example in Canada and BC, where you're not only talking about women being disappeared and killed, Indigenous women mostly, and that's the double aspect. So it's a true crime thing, and it's also an Indigenous thing. So you want to show the utmost respect and not not saying that like something like the Villisca Axe Murder House in Iowa is true crime and that, but it's a little further away in time, and I think
like Lizzie Borden, very far.
Yeah,
there's that safety.
Good. Nobody's gone to Polytechnique too.
Yeah, Liquid Polytechnique. Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's gone there to do anything. I don't think they'd let you in though.
No,
not knowingly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not that they're not there. I just think that they're not talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew somebody who did a ghost tour, and there was some teenagers that were killed at one of the locations this person went to, but this person was picking up on, I guess they had a medium there as well. They were picking up on like older spirits from probably, I would say probably late 1800s, early 1900s, and the names they were given, everybody was picking up the mediums. We had so many like gifted people who come on, even on Casa Loma. So many gifted people would come along. But anyway, it just turned out that the story of the location got leaked out, and the newspapers went crazy. Yeah. And it came to my attention. I'm like, you're an idiot. You're going to use that location? You're an idiot. I don't care which spirit you're picking up or who you're talking about. There has to be morality somewhere. There has to be some kind of integrity.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely the thing. And also the other aspect too is these points in times that are marked by battle and war and conflict, or even like in any major Canadian city, cholera and outbreaks and stuff like that. You don't see that as much anymore. And I think that might contribute to it as well, is that there's not this, outside of recent times of COVID pandemic, but there isn't like a mass trauma. Like the Battle of Plains of Abraham and Queenston Heights.
Yes.
Sunnybrook Hospital was packed with tuberculosis. They used to put them out on the outside terrace in the winter.
Yes. Yeah.
There's photographs of that everywhere. I've been in that hospital with my dad, unfortunately, but I remember that all hospitals are hard to go into. There's a reason why there's a show, just haunted hospitals. But I remember that in particular, I had to look into the story behind it after being there.
Yeah. I did a couple of episodes, season 4 of Haunted Hospitals. And the one that fascinated me was there was an underground tunnel that connects the Toronto General to Princess Margaret and Mount Sinai, that has that phone that rings, and that kind of stuck with me. And I was talking with I get treatment for my immune condition at Princess Margaret, and it's I was talking to some of the nurses about that. And they go, "Oh yeah, I know that tunnel. I know that tunnel well."
Nurses have the best stories. The nurses have the best stories.
Oh yeah.
If you can get one to talk, you'll learn everything.
No, most of them are talking now, especially since
now,
hospitals.
Yeah.
Michael says modern life, while stressful, may not have the same legendary wait for ghost stories to stick. He says older ghosts tales have had decades or centuries to solidify in culture, passed down through campfires or books like Eerie Whispers. Modern ghost stories are still new, needing time to gain traction. And modern ghosts may exist but struggle against cultural filters that favor historical drama or dismiss contemporary claims.
Perfect. You got
Very
it.
well said.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you got to get the kids off the internet if you want them to talk
That's
about
true.
ghost stories. Get them off a phone or
There's
put
a
it
whole
on
other
the
world
phone.
out there they could be experiencing.
Yeah.
Might not sleep at night, but they could
Wait for
experience it.
AI. We'll see what happens to our phones.
It
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, Ian Gibbs in his book Haunted Calgary. Sorry, I'm just looking over at my bookshelf here to see if I can see.
Yeah, no problem.
He talks about a haunted bar in Calgary that has a spirit either from the 80s or 90s. And, you know, when I spoke to him about that book, he mentioned that because it stood out as a more modern goings on, but there's also like a true crime element to that as well. I find there is that pervasiveness with true crime blurring over. There are stories from our past that are true crime. Of course, Fantan Alley in Victoria, and the story of Mary Gallagher, but they're still distant and in the past, which makes it safe to talk about.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's so many stories out there, you know, that you're going to hear from the elderly. You're going to hear from people who, you know, who grew up early days. Like my grandparents were very, very forthcoming with their stories. And I remember when I was doing research, reading an article about deathbed confessions from World War I soldiers, you know, in the Air Force. And they were just saying that because they were never allowed to talk about it, but on their deathbeds, they would tell their loved ones, they would say, I have to get this off my chest. I can't go with this. And then all of a sudden, now there was this influx of deathbed confessions from World War I soldiers or pilots. You know, they would see, you know, even UFOs in the sky or crazy things would happen to them. And it's like, don't talk about anything. So how many stories are just have gone, you know, have gone basically to the grave, or how many stories are just still waiting to be told?
Yeah. And then, of course, to talk about ghosts, you also have to define what a ghost is. I think the prevailing idea is some sort of trauma or some the Victorian Gothic idea. The Susan Hill is the woman in black, or there's some unresolved issue. And I think we're still kind of tethered to those Victorian ideals because, as Michael said, that it's gained traction, it's kept going, and of course, that's when exploration of the paranormal and the afterlife started with people like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini challenging the spiritualists and stuff like that. So that's when, you know, people were actually picking up the torch, carrying it, and investigating thoroughly through a somewhat scientific lens. But even though it's like, I think the best definition of investigating the paranormal, it's a social science. It's an anthropological study, social anthropological study. So it's very interesting. You have to define what a ghost is, and it changes from culture to culture. And there are different types too. I mean, you have, in Southeast Asia, you have Kasui and Mananagal. So it's really fascinating, and there's so much ghost lore in Japan.
They're into it though.
Oh yeah.
I can't get over the Asian culture. Like when I would do events, I mean, we had their media showing up. We had like their TV people. I never realized Toronto had like an Asian cultural television network, and they followed me everywhere. Like wherever I was doing, they're like, "We love this." I'm just like, "I love you." It was so refreshing. But again, when you say, you know, that they have all of these amazing stories, these guys would come to some of the events and tell me incredible things. And I would just like, there's no boundaries to it. It's
I
interesting that some countries like ours,
yeah.
and then you look the other side of the spectrum is so.
It's culture though too.
Yeah. Yes.
It's
And
culture.
Canadians are
Especially
not.
Japanese. Their culture is beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah.
I tried to get my one friend who's South Korean to chat about South Korean beliefs and ghosts and stuff like that. And he was very tight-lipped, but like off the record, he had mentioned to me that his father was the old kind of superstitious type. He saw a seer or a shaman in South Korea, and she told him, or they told him, that he was going to die.
Oh.
And that's kind of what prompted his move to Canada with his family. But his father actually did die.
Oh.
So it was very interesting. I really kind of wanted to include that, but I mean, this is one
How
of
do you?
my closest friends. So, but it was fascinating to hear that story. And I was reaching out to the Buddhist community in Canada, the Sikh and Hindu communities, because I really wanted to include those populations in the book as well. Which, if there's ever a second edition, I'd love to include that.
I remember reading an article at one time, and again, this is going back a while, about Buddhists, and I've met, I meet people from all walks of life, right, and within the field, as you know, because you have you're on the other spectrum. Where everybody comes to you with stories, but apparently, like even the Buddhists I've spoken to, goes, we don't have ghostly experiences. Like the belief system is just different. Whereas they say one of the most haunted groups of people of faith are the ones that have the most activity are Christians or Catholics. And I thought that was interesting to read that. I don't know.
Jewish have a lot too. They have a lot as well. They have the Dybbuk box. They believe in the demons. They have all of that.
Yeah, Shadim. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I loved exploring that part. I was very thankful for the academic who put me in touch with the sheik. They had shared their stories with jinn with me, and I do include that in the book. They didn't want to go on record, but I was very thankful for their insight, and to be able to chat with them about it. So,
so I mean, being in this country, but from other countries, do you find they're a lot more forthcoming than, let's say, Canadians in general about the topic?
I would probably say, I mean, you'd have to kind of earn that kind of right to chat with them about their beliefs. And when I interviewed Aaron Goodpipe, I offered tobacco. That's for the indigenous belief, and I have a kind of a funny side story to that. Being able to go to the mosque in Mississauga and sit down with the sheik was a privilege. It was a privilege to chat with him and listen to him talk about ruqyah and jinn, and why there's a prayer in the dawn and why there's a prayer in the evening. And part of that prayer includes keeping the jinn away at night and jinn away in the morning day. So it was very. It was a privilege to chat with them about that. I think that to go into the funny story, it was just my complete absent-mindedness when I went down to the Indigenous organization at UFT. I got the red sachet and the tobacco, tied it up, got I guess it was a non-odor package thing, bubble wrap to put it in, send it in the mail to Aaron, and I didn't realize I should have claimed that, right? I should have said, well, this is a small sachet of tobacco. I never said, I completely forgot. I wasn't even thinking, right? So it went off into the mail, and I'm like, my wife goes, you did tell them there's tobacco in that package, right?
And it's illegal.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Oh,
It's illegal. That's
yeah,
why you have to claim cigarettes if you're a smoker.
yes.
Yeah, there's
And
taxes and duties on that stuff.
so for the whole week, I was sitting there waiting for a knock at the door, and I'm like,
From CBSA.
somebody, right? And then Aaron texted me, "Got your package. Thank you so much." I'm like, "Thank you."
hallelujah.
If it's just the mail, like they don't. Well, I don't know now,
Mm.
but let's not even go there. But yeah, you got lucky because it is illegal
Mm.
if it's crossing a border.
Well, it went from Ontario to one of the provinces in the prairies, right? So, without
Well,
going
it's
into
okay across Canada.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not okay over the U.S. border.
Yes,
Then it's
well,
illegal, but you're okay to send anything you want to Vancouver.
so
Yeah.
it was. I was still worried about that. And
Of
then when I
course.
got the text from Aaron, everything was good, and I was like thankful.
Yeah, that's Wayne says the tobacco gods were smiling upon you there for that one, helping you out. So what filming? I mean, in Canada compared to, let's say, in the U.S., because the U.S., soon as there's so much of it, soon as a location becomes available, everybody is brothers, uncle, doesn't matter who, everybody's in this place. But we don't have that problem here in Canada. even though equally there are some pretty haunted locations out here. I mean, we know that they're here. I mean, paranormal teams out here have endless lists of places. I've spent 20 years doing it and all kinds of lists. I still get places sent to me.
Oh, yeah. It's fascinating, and I that's part of the article that we talked about, and Morgan had mentioned in the one article that they wouldn't let her go to all the hot spots in the location, and they told her basically she had to give the Zelda Rubinstein's character from Poltergeist. I need to get my power cord.
Okay, it's okay.
Give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, I love that. 2 shakes
Go ahead.
of a lamb's tail.
Okay, go ahead.
That's so cute. 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
The manor was active the entire time we lived there. Yes, it was. Right to the end and some.
Yeah.
That's okay. Nice to have this quiet house now, though, I have to say.
Oh, it's so peaceful.
Okay,
there.
good. I just see him plugging in there. We'll bring him back in.
Great stories.
Oh, it was interesting. It was a lot of fun consulting as well. I just found some fascinating questions. Are you good, Brian? Yeah, just not.
Sorry about that.
All right, good. That's okay.
I tried to do that as fast as possible without taking any cats or kids out.
Yeah, that's all right. So, so they were not letting her go into all of the interesting places.
Yeah, so the most active spot in that location, I remember her mentioning that she couldn't go in there, which kind of defeats the purpose, but they were trying to get her, like, funnel her into saying, well, there's no activity. This house, Tangina saying this house is clean, right?
Oh, I see.
So it's kind of funny that way. I think there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape. In events like at one Spadina Crescent, where somebody was doing a ghost investigation in their early aughts, they slipped off the roof and fell to their death. So as we spoke about, liability is a big concern, of course. And a place like the Garrison, I know James White, when he did a seance there last year, had to make sure that everyone was aware of the holes in the floor of the barracks and so forth. So there are a lot of hurdles for events like that, for any investigations. And I think that's why you're seeing museums and locations kind of teaming up with paranormal groups to do these fundraisers more, because
they always have their people on site as well, right?
Exactly. So there's that aspect of being able to control what happens at the location, being mindful of the property as people were coming in, and the investigators are sharing a couple ghost stories here and there. I know with some of the major ghost tour groups in Ontario, they've had challenges with locations. We
had insurance. I made sure I had insurance for all of that.
Yeah.
So they felt more relaxed.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Otherwise, they can get sued. That's why it's so important for people to be reminded, if you're listening and you're into the spooky month and you think, hey, I'm just going to go check out that place behind my house a few roads back.
You can't. It's not that easy. Like when you say people not being at ease, you think some of that might even be with, because I know, like, on our tour at the time, there was a church, and the city of Burlington would give us all kinds of carte blanche because we were okay, and even the police would drive by. It's like, who is everybody over there by the church? But they look at us and go, and we'd go, yeah, okay, it would be fine. But the church didn't want the stigma. I think it's a stigma thing as well.
Yes, big time. Yeah, I think that stigma is very very prevalent in Canadians, and that's what contributes to the risk adverse nature of Canadians. The very polite, don't want to offend. Those kind of stereotypes are kind of just beneath the surface with Canadians, not wanting to offend or get into a sticky situation. And I think that's why there's that hesitancy for a lot of locations to avoid dark tourism as well in Canada. That's
a big one. I mean, the challenges were always there, even with Casa Loma. Like, we were approached. It's like, no, like I remember sitting down with them. It's like, no, like, don't think you weren't researched. Right. So it was offered up. We're just like, it's like, wow, but that was a big deal because people had tried and tried and tried for so many years to have access to this location. I mean, they had like a huge box full of letters from people who've been visiting over 40, 50 years of people who had experiences. Because there's something to it. Yeah. It's kind of like, wow, okay. So, and that was pretty prestigious because of the Kiwanis. So you have an organization who has been essentially managing this place, and she says, like, we have a board of little old kind, sweet gentlemen in there, and this is not their thing. So I think we're going back, to that generation again as well. And maybe some of these locations.
Before I did the ghost tour with you, I remember doing a special feature for one of the inserts for the Town Crier, and one of the employees took me around Casa Loma and pointed out a lot of the locations.
Yeah.
Of course, the stable is still hearing the horses in there, as well as he mentioned the servants' quarters was probably the most active in his viewpoint.
It always is, though, isn't it? I mean, even Dundurn Castle, the same thing. The servants' quarters, Battlefield Park, the servants. Yeah. That's where people were always together. That was the usually poor, and it's a lot of pain.
Exactly.
Casa Loma had its stories that they never told anybody.
Yeah.
They said that's who we know, who the true experiencers are.
Yeah.
So we were told the stories. I pegged off a few things. She goes, well, that's why you're here. But I was not allowed to tell the stories. But it was interesting to see those stories unfold. But I think it goes into the prestigious organizations or locations or those who just don't want that stigma. Like when it changed hands, and it's like they didn't want that stigma.
Yeah.
I've never been there. And I lived there for years. I grew up, I was born and raised in Toronto, and I've never been to Casa Loma.
Well, it's my favorite landmark in the city.
Right? And I have a sketch that was given to me. My dad used to work for the owners of the Four Seasons. So it was given to me by Isidore and Rosalie Sharp, but someone did a pencil sketch, like a lead pencil sketch of Casa Loma that I have hanging in my house, but yet I've never been there.
It's incredible.
Not remote, like in person. Remotely, yes, but not in person. But yeah.
People have always asked me, have you ever had the place to yourself? I said, yes.
That had to be fun.
And they'd say, do you want us to turn on the lights? I'd say, no, I don't want it. I'd just like run up and down this tunnel. Like I knew it so well.
Yeah.
You know, the hunting lodge, and that was never open. So there's just places that I think, I mean, obviously just the well-known places, but you know, there's those little places like you say up north, just the quiet little sleeper towns.
Places like Cobalt, and I remember one of the stories I did for the Superstitious Times talking about the boards. There's a train station that they were wanting to renovate, and they just squeaked by with the fundraiser. 4-3, I think the vote was. I'd have to look it up on the Superstitious Times website, but yeah, it was an interesting story. I did. Let's see, I'll look it up here quickly.
Yeah, of course.
But
yeah,
there we go. It was fundraiser for the McAdam railway station.
Again, railway.
Yeah, it's always the railway.
But a lot of people lost their lives because they would send in immigrants with, I can't remember what that liquid's called because that's just me. But I can't remember, to blow up a hole in the mountain so that they can continue with the railway. So it's like, how many Chinese people died to build that railway?
The Canadian Heritage moment, I always remember the gentleman sitting down talking to the kids. They say for every mile of railway, there's one dead Chinese man.
Right? I remember that too. I used to love those little moments.
They still produce them. I know Bora Laskin was the most recent one that they did a video for, but
I've got to search them on YouTube and watch them all.
Yes, most definitely. I mean, that's such a big thing in Canadian, you know, the hinterland videos.
Yes.
I love that. That whistle and the loon.
So it's like those things. I mean, like right as soon as you say Canadian Heritage moment, I'll hear either, you know, Jacques Plante where he gets the mask, or I ain't gonna make it with the Underground Railroad.
Oh yes! Oh my goodness!
A good comment. Rails were the only way to travel the country. Keep in mind that the old rails were made from iron, and iron is often connected with spiritual activity. That's true.
Makes sense.
That's true.
And iron was very big in the Victorian era and Edwardian era. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Kept the country together, and when there were big snowstorms, they had to dig out the rails so the train could get in with supplies. And I think that was one of the biggest fears of like starving to death. You know, when you know, Saskatchewan's early days, Alberta's early days. Manitoba.
Oh my gosh,
They're so remote.
They can't. They still don't have Wi-Fi like in most of those provinces. Once you go past like the middle up north, they already. There's nothing, even Manitoba. I wonder if, with them looking into the Ring of Fire, if we're going to get any modern ghost stories from that once they start digging. Hi, Cece. Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. So, in all your research, what experiences, all places you've been? Have you had any experiences?
Have I had any experiences?
Yeah, what an experience that made you a believer, possible believer.
Well, it's funny. I if you knew me as a teenager, I was agog and a lot more into it, like belief wise.
Yeah.
And as I got older, went through archaeology at U of T, and then, you know, a journalist, I've become like, you know, I'm open, but it's like, could that be this? Could that be that? And then I'll try, and then I'm like, okay, now I don't have any answers. but I'm always kind of have Neil deGrasse Tyson stuck in the back of my head. You have the God of the gaps. And it's like you fill everything you don't know in with God or the supernatural. So it's like, but I think, what laid the foundation for me was my experience in British Columbia when I was 3 years old, 3 or 4. I mentioned I was born in Ontario, Welland, Ontario, and my dad was a carpenter. So in the recession of the early 80s, there wasn't a lot of work in Ontario, so we moved out west. Loaded up the car, the cat, and a small little trailer, and rode the Trans-Canada Highway out to Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows. So my parents went through a rough time out there. A lot of family issues and not enough support system out there. So they left me with family friends so they could kind of take a trip to convalesce, I guess, or kind of relax, unwind, Vancouver Island. And it was at that house. I don't know if it was in Maple Ridge or Pitt Meadows, but it was on the outskirts of the town. So slightly rural, but not rural enough that we're out in the sticks. And they had a lot of like animals at the house, like a lot of dogs, a lot of cats. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and the door was like, so it was like two single beds flanking a window, moonlight coming in. The door is like at the foot of my bed, and it swings open slowly. So I'm like, I'm thinking this is a cat or a dog. So I go to the bottom of the bed to see if there's a critter about. 3 or 4 year old loves critters, right? Yeah. And didn't see anything. So I remember pulling myself up to the head of the bed and looking into the opposite corner and seeing a dark mass slowly taking the shape of a person. And, I had a stuffed Dino from Bedrock City in Chilliwack. And
I love it.
I clutched it through the sheet over my head. And the odd thing was I fell asleep. And I talk about that in the beginning of the book, kind of laying, why do I like the paranormal, write about it, even though I'm more skeptical now than I was when I was younger. But I never quite understood why I fell asleep if I was that terrified. And, Angel Morgan, who's a medium, had mentioned to me that it was somebody there to protect you because your family was going through a tough spot. And I'm like, it's possible. And I also kind of thought that the traumatic experiences of my parents being out in BC during that time, and in the early 80s, it was also the start of a lot of other things. That my mom had to get a blood transfusion. She didn't because of the AIDS, start of this AIDS scare.
Oh, I remember that.
There was a lot of stuff going on, but I think it could have been a manifestation of me trying to process the emotions of my parents at 3 years old.
Like a psychokinesis, you were projecting out the activity.
Yeah. So it's like something, and that's kind of how I think about it now it was me trying to process what was going on. And I know as a kid, I had a lot of dreams about the fear of abandonment and stuff like that. So that anxiety, you don't know how it's coming from. And then as an adult, you kind of look at it and I'm like, okay, so that could be an explanation. And what Angel had mentioned, it was could be an explanation too. So like I said, my book asks more questions than answers it, because to quote my mom, you don't know what happens until you die, right?
It's true, but it's a journey, like I'd like to think, that, as you get older, obviously you're going to, we do tend to be more logical, for sure we do. And I think with parapsychology, which has always been there, but I think it seems to be something that's coming to the forefront a little bit more now. And I just think perhaps people who need that scientific edge, or they need something more concrete than just this, this sort of frou-frou. Oh, it's a ghost. I mean, some people, we know there's ghosts out there, but other people, it's just like they want something tangible, and maybe that's the answer.
Yeah. And it was interesting during the 80s. I mean, Dan Aykroyd, when he wrote Ghostbusters, there's a lot of stuff in there that was happening in the paranormal community, where universities were shutting down their parapsychology departments. And I mean, we saw that in the first 15 minutes of the movie, where they're being kicked out of their office in the university campus.
Mm-hmm. That's because the movie The Entity came in and ruined it for everybody.
Oh, Penn State. They had footage. That's why.
Yeah.
Although I think York U has lots of stuff going on in those tunnels.
Oh yes,
yeah. I've been in there.
UFT, the Diablos and Reznikov, which is actually one of my favorite kind of folklore stories, especially because there's that physical evidence of the axe mark in the door and the gargoyles and stuff like that. And then when a fire hit University College, they did find the remains of a person in the upper part of the building. So it just adds to that mystique of Reznikov and Diablos and the love triangle, which is probably one of my other favorite. Not just because I'm a UFT alum, but it's those tales. And it does get mentioned in River Momo, which is a great book that follows the characters throughout Toronto, Caribbean diaspora to University of Toronto. And Reznikov and Diablos is mentioned in that. So that tickled me when I read that and Zalika, sorry, I gotta look that up. Let me confirm that. Sorry. River Muma, Zalika Reed Benta. Sorry, I did speak with her. Thankful for that opportunity to chat about the influence for her book, as well as Duppies and the rolling calf and a lot of that folklore. So, but there's just so much.
Everything's got a good ghost story, though, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's funny. I mean, you do all the stuff, Superstitious Times, Town Crier. You've been sort of, dipping your toes for a little bit, and you seem to be just going up. What about all your logical friends? Are they kind of looking at you, your UT friends, going, "Come on, Brian, what are you doing?" Or are they into it?
Well, it depends if they're archaeologists.
You know what? I've had nothing but support for this and interest. I don't know if it's because how I approach it through a social anthropological lens and just sheer awe and curiosity. I think you have to be curious to be a journalist too. You want to find these stories and you want to share them and you want to get to the root of it. And that's what I love about folklore is what's scaring people during those times. And that's how you get these manifestations. Like the Changeling is one story from Irish folklore.
That's a great one.
Like sky high infant mortality, and you're associating that, of course, with the changeling idea, where something comes in, takes your baby, and leaves you with something that's not your baby, right? The changeling. So it's really neat that folklore, of course.
I love it. That's why I really get into oral traditions and the oral history, just stuff that gets passed down, and it's incredible. We've got a show on the network now that's the hosts are Navajo, and they bring on different indigenous from the whole, all over the place, all over the world, and it's so interesting to hear all the similarities of oral traditions. It's unbelievable.
I find now that I know so much about Canada and the US when it comes to the paranormal, I'm really more excited about learning about other parts of the world, whether it's El Sombreron in Mexico or them, as I mentioned before, Mananangal in Singapore and Indonesia and the Philippines.
Mhm.
And then, of course, Strigoi,
Yes.
all that stuff. It's
Yeah.
fascinating to kind of where did these stories start? What was going on in this world? I wrote about the Prague Golem, which has always fascinated me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like same idea, just different names and different, little bit different terminology, but the backstory is the same, which makes it just amazing. Which I guess brings me to my next question is now with all of these, again, I say podcasts, television shows, it being like in your face, I guess, and seeing academics come on. I've had people with doctorates come on and talk about different things. We explore history and things like that too. It's not just paranormal on the show, but I think, do you feel with people seeing, not just everyday people come out, but people who are putting it out there, putting themselves out there, and like doctors and, like you say, archaeologists or people of academic with strong academic backgrounds. Do you think maybe now we're starting to ease up a little bit and say, okay, it's all out there. Maybe it's just safe to talk about it.
I definitely I get that vibe, and I'm seeing more academics talk about it. There's a gentleman from Simon Fraser University who I've interviewed for a Haunted magazine article.
Mm-hmm.
There are people exploring these communities. There are academics studying Santa Muerte, which is a story I'm writing for Haunted magazine down the road as well. You're seeing more horror movies, and that glut of horror movies in the theater doing well in the theater, from Weapons to the most recent Conjuring movie,
Mm-hmm.
The Witch and Midsummer and all this stuff. And it's exploring folklore, the horror behind folklore. And I think that's a precursor to conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about where have we been, where have we come from, and kind of opening the door to just talk about this stuff, especially folkloric horror, like Hereditary, and Midsummer, as I mentioned before. The challenges and the battles for survival humans, even as far in the Victorian era, had to kind of overcome, like cholera outbreaks, isolation, and lighthouses. Like I think Connecticut, there's like this big block, and I know it's allegedly haunted as well, but there's that well-known lighthouse just in the middle of the bay, and like takes a while to get any land.
Yes.
So it's stuff like that where you get the folklore, the sirens, and all this stuff, and it's just awesome. And then story, of course, even in ancient Greek times, where you had the Scylla and Charybdis. It's just fascinating.
I love it that people are starting to open up. They're starting to say, it's okay. I mean, it's time. We're in 2025. I think it's okay to talk about it,
Yes.
But it will be interesting to see how many people present their locations. Because that gets funky. Because having had a place where people at one time could come and stay, it gets like, it's like that double-edged sword, being the person who goes. Because when I travel, 99% of the time it's in a haunted place that I stay at, unless I can't find one, and it has to be old unless I can't find one. So on the flip side, being the one who has a location where people come into, and you have to, some people, I've heard the term, they're a whole other breed of people coming to stay. It's kind of like, I'm one of those breed of people. But okay, I won't let that insult me.
What you talking about? Yeah.
Who wants to stay in room 202 at the Fort Garry Hotel? I do.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's me. Yeah, exactly. So it would be curious to see if more people come forward. Like you say, it's just it's a good moneymaker. People are starting to sell their houses, and like, well, I'm going to say it's haunted.
Yes, I've been seeing those not haunted. Just to draw people in. It's a very passive aggressive way of saying this is not haunted and implying that it might be haunted.
Well, in the US, you have to, if it is haunted or if there was a murder, you have to disclose it.
In Canada as well.
Yeah.
Is it now in Canada? I know.
I did an article for the Toronto Star back in 2007 with realtors.
Yeah.
And that's what they said.
That's fairly new then, because you didn't have to before.
I
I didn't have to say anything about my dad's house when I sold it. And I cleared that house before the realtor even came in.
No, I did a piece as well for the Superstitious Times touching on that. And I know I spoke with realtor Patrick Rocca on Leaside, and he had, you know, they hired him to come in to sell a condo, and once he found out the history of that condo, it's like, oh nope, I'm not having anything to do with that one, right? So, but it's there's that aspect too, and I think with any private location, there's hesitancy, and rightly so, because people are not going to want, you know, a whole West Pittston media descending, and you know, you've got the Warrens there talking to the media, telling, well, we have evidence, but we gave it to the Catholic Church, so we can't give it to you. And I remember talking to Lloyd Auerbach about that. He's like, yeah, it's just like the journalists were tired of it, but you had the whole street full of people and curiosity. So I think the private aspect will always be private and dependent on the people, and those are the stories that kind of get tucked away, and they're more lurid and provocative. And I think I'm very interested in doing something like that, but keeping it on the QT and very cognizant of like a family involved, or if it's a business location and so forth. I remember, like, sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
There's a stigma of the one apartment above a pizza shop, I believe, down in St. Catharines. There's a poltergeist.
There's a big case for St. Catharines.
So it's interesting, that division. But I think the public locations and the hesitancy of ownership or organizations looking over them there's a lot to do with liability and
it's just integrity.
Integrity, yes.
The one thing I used to get a lot of, why don't you have cases on your website? It says, why would I do that? Because I respect your privacy. Oh, you're scowling at me. It's just like, I never did it. The only time something got advertised is if it was a public location that asked for it, so they could have people come to their establishment. Yeah. So it's funny how there's this again stigma on a different level, that because you research something, you should have it all over the place and just share that stuff up with everybody, people's personal business. And
I've been asked for crime scene photos of Lomas, Colorado, and I just look at them like, do you want your child's photographs?
It's a personal thing.
Yeah, no, you have to have integrity.
Well. And it's, of course, when I said about the Superstitious Times, that was not investigating true crime scenes, but I just to chat with the people who are doing the investigating and talk to the historians to open up those doors to, you know, kind of give a little bit of what that individual wanted, like give me the case file. So if someone's investigating, what have you uncovered? And that's what I'm doing to kind of open it up.
I find, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. I said, nope, that's good.
I have worked with psychologists even, and at the time, who were working with families, and they said, no, we find there's a benefit to it, to the research in a way, because if something is leading them to think that there's something going on, it goes, that's out of my wheelhouse. I just need to make sure everything's going on up here or here. But, like, I've worked with psychologists, and I thought that was really interesting, because that was very early days. And from what I understand now, the psychologists that primarily work just with people who are in situations where they believe they're like haunted, and obviously not a kind way, because that's, they're getting themselves straight. But I don't know. It's opening doors for sure.
Yeah, and I mean the whole parapsychology studies, like outside of psychology, and just outside that aspect. But it's I find it's a generation echo. I like to kind of refer to it as we are seeing it open up, like because I mean, growing up in the 80s, we're probably watching all the stuff that people who grew up with the Universal monsters in the 50s and 60s are passing down to us. Yeah. And then you'll see that kind of pass down even further to like what we're seeing now in the 20s.
Yes.
Right.
But when you have shows that are geared just for kids investigating, because that we've had those in Canada too, where you have kids out investigating, and that drove people crazy, because they were just like, you can't have kids doing that. Because all of a sudden you had every little kid out there going, I want an EMF detector, I want a ghost box, I want, let's just invite everything in, because that's what's going to happen.
They're getting cell phones at a young age too, so they can put those apps on their phones on their own.
Oh, I have just been informed that the Toronto Blue Jays won.
Woo! Yay!
Are we gonna hit it 3 World Series in less than 50 years?
Sorry, I think that's what my wife was subtly pushing a piece of paper, and that's why.
That's okay. Tell her thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that news. Thank you. Going back to the U of T, when Wayne was he's in cell phones up there, he said the security guy at the U of T residence told me that one night he was on patrol in the woman's dorm and saw a shabby dressed man in the stairwell. He called out to the man, and the man disappeared.
I have heard that.
Yeah.
The U of T has a lot more locations than just University College that are haunted. I know they've had issues, of course. University College dorm, it's easily accessible and stuff like that, and there's always safety concerns there.
Yeah,
but yeah, that I remember hearing that story. I guess John Robert Colombo, University College. There's the McDonald Mowat House, which has a lot of activity. University College. There's been stories circulating around, of course. Victoria College as well at U of T, and ROM, of course.
Absolutely. And Humber College must be really bad too, since they're sitting on the Humber River.
And it's the old, the renovated asylum that was down there. So there's a lot of activity there.
Across the street, you've got Etobicoke Hospital.
Yeah.
I'm starting to miss home.
There's some great places. Some that are, some that are really generous with their time about talking about, the things that go on there. Others who just like, no, we don't want to.
There was, of course, Toronto being more industrial in its early stages. My friend who shot the headshots for me for the book, Trevor, had kind of said, there's a location on Richmond Street that used to be kind of a mill or ginny cotton, and young boy has been seen. So back then they had children working and that aspect. And when I tried to reach out to the location, they were very tight-lipped.
I would think the entire fashion district has a lot of that going on, though.
Well, I'll tell you, I remember doing an article and was asked to go into Malabar's.
Ah, yes, the Malabar,
right? Great stories out of there. They basically just gave carte blanche. We got to see everything, along with the Winter Garden Theater, the Elgin.
Elgin.
They were always, they were pretty standoffish, and, I just started pegging things off and realized, okay, I knew a thing or two. And they brought me downstairs. The manager goes, it was at the time, I've been here 20 years. He goes, I'm going to show you something that nobody gets to see. I said, okay. And he brought me downstairs, and behind a curtain, did he show you the well? Did you ever see the well?
Oh, no, I remember you sharing the story once before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they lifted up the grand staircase and dug down to put a big rotunda area because they needed the additional reception, they found a house, an old
Oh.
farmhouse. And he goes, obviously, we had to, it was all smushed down there. We had to remove all that. He said, but we kept one thing. And he moved this curtain back in the office area. And he goes, this is the well. And you look way up and that's how far up they dug. I said, you kept the well. He goes, I had to prove the house was here. I was like, oh,
really
my gosh.
interesting because their water table is so damn high downtown
Well,
Toronto.
they were.
Yeah.
But you
It's
see, this
still
is
a problem. Yeah.
it's one
Anything-
example of something you never get to see.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What about Distillery District? Did you go in there?
Yeah, the distillery district is really interesting, and
Yeah.
given a lot of that labor standards and safety and stuff like that wasn't as high. And Haunted Walks is doing. I'm working on a story about Haunted Walks about the Don River and the brickworks.
Mhm.
Apparently, there's a night watchman who's been seen carrying a lantern across. So that's one of the stories that Jim shared with me from Haunted Walks. So doing that.
Did Lorraine Warren do that one? She did a bunch of Toronto footpaths not long before she passed away. She never did that.
No, because I knew Lorraine at that point. They went to some places. They didn't do all those places.
I can't remember which ones she did because I missed it. But I was excited that she was there.
Yeah,
I think
it was a friend of mine who put that on, so I was able to
very
spend
nice.
time with her.
Sorry, go ahead.
The tunnels that go at the old Lakeshore Hospital. I knew somebody who lived in that little mansion there, but he said the tunnels were brutal for weird stuff going on. He goes, my friend's dad was an electrician and saw a nurse in the tunnel. He called out to her. She turned around but had no face, so he just ran out and he left all the stuff there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But I knew people who said horrific things, like it was horrifically haunted.
Yes.
The beaches have a lot of stuff at night. Even where the Toronto Island Ferry goes across, if you just sit there at night on the bench to the island, you'll see stuff on the water.
I can see because a lot of the ships with immigrants landed in that spot. That's why they have the Irish potato famine statues in that location.
Yeah. My dad landed in Halifax.
Oh, right
Both
on.
my dad and my mom, Pier 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, it's I mean, what was it? When I was just starting out as a journalist, I worked for a trade publication called Daily Commercial News, and I did a story for the Halloween issue about trades doing the renovations down at Humber. And the one gentleman I spoke to, he was there. He would go into work. He'd take a step down from his ladder and just place his tools where they were. He'd come back and the tools were gone. He was done with that. But it was very interesting. They would see things out of the corner of their eye and they would question, what did I just see?
But see, you get the stories from the tradespeople. Wayne's got miles of stories from the Bell buildings, all the different ones. Crazy stories, but they'll never let you in.
No.
Many stories where he was just working and things were happening. And he'd be just like, all right.
Go in and apply for a job.
There's nobody working in them. They're
I
all
know.
empty.
My
It's
brother
all
used to take
electronic
care
now.
of them.
Down by the Portlands, there's a postal station that has a couple of stories associated with it. I do, in my travels, I do hear about locations that aren't public about it.
Yeah.
Because it's either an institution, like most institutions won't share, like hospitals, schools, postal out stations, stuff like that. They won't share any weird going on because it's a functioning facility, right?
No,
Yeah.
exactly. A reputation again.
Well, they
the
don't want
stigma.
people afraid to
The
not
stigma.
go to the hospital because of, maybe avoid an emergency room because they have fear. But anyone who lives in Toronto knows all those hospitals are haunted downtown. I mean, like anyone who lives there.
St. Mike's.
My mother passed away at St. Mike's. Take an elevator in St. Mike's and as a medium and tell me how that feels.
Well,
It's noisy.
there's a faceless nun, I think, that walks one of the wards at St.
Jesus.
Mike.
There's a lot of people that walk.
Because they're not scary
St.
enough.
Mike's.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
those Conjuring movies. Great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Throw a
the
faceless
last
nun
one.
in the mix.
The last one is the best one they've done so far. I
Oh.
finally got a chance to see it, and I was really impressed with the story.
I remember reading the Smurls story. I think I have. Yep, The Haunted. It's up on my thing with Ghost Hunters and Graveyard. But yeah, I remember reading that book as a teenager. Scared the crap out of me. And I remember seeing the Sally Kirkland, The Haunted 1991 TV movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
felt
It was a lot better.
Yeah, it was.
there were parts in that movie that stuck with me, like the neighbors walking by the house, looking at the window and seeing the rapid movement of the silhouette of the screaming. That stuck with me. And then, you know, I think the actor who played the patriarch of the family, he was, I think it's the same actor who was in Jurassic Park.
Now I have to go watch it again.
I can't remember. He played the lawyer.
Right.
Okay.
I see him in my head, but I can't remember his name either.
No.
Yeah.
He had a mustache in that one, but yeah, it's just and in having that connection and being in university, calling Ed Warren, like first Lorraine Warren answered and then Ed passed the phone to Ed, and then, you know, being able to speak with Tony Spira. So it was an interesting movie for me because you're seeing these people that you know existed and Hollywood's been on it, right?
And how he came into it was nice to see Tony come into this story.
Yes.
Yeah. And understand that Judy also had experiences because she doesn't really talk about it. So that was it. I found it very interesting.
Yeah.
I caught it today actually because I wanted to see if you would bring it up. So I caught it today.
Well, we're at the top of the hour.
Sorry, 2 hours. Wow, almost.
It does, yeah. It goes quick, doesn't it?
When it's fun.
I know. So where can people? I mean, I have everything written up in the show description, so people will see it if they just go in the description. But where can they find the book?
It's available pretty much everywhere. So, you know, if you, I'm not going to tell you where to get it, but you can get it directly from the publisher, Dundurn Press.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can get it from Indigo Books.
Oh.
And you can get it through Amazon. I think I mentioned Amazon.
Oh, I didn't know that because I've been sitting here waiting for the postal people, thinking I was going to get it from Dundurn.
And that is actually kind of creating a challenge for Indigo orders and Amazon orders.
Right now, yeah. But you can pick up at the store.
Yes, Dundurn has a store on Queen East at the foot of Greenwood. It's just east of there. That's a great place to visit for a bunch of stuff. If you're looking for John Robert Colombo or Terry Boyle or Mark Leslie's books as well, the whole gamut, because Dundurn is great for the paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
And you can also, for the U.S. listeners, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore chain. I know a friend who recently moved to North Carolina. He was asking, and I kind of mentioned some of the local chains down there that they have it on their website as well.
Barnes and Noble's a lot like our Chapters Indigo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on and just sharing all of your insight with us. I'm looking forward to seeing the next evolution of paranormal people. I'm hoping it's not a generation that just sort of dies off with us oldies.
Who are you calling old?
I'll talk about this until I'm dead. I swear to God, and I'll talk to you in the afterlife. But anyway. But
Did
thank
you catch
you.
my shirt?
Thank you. And sorry.
Friends. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to that next book and your future projects. You always know where to find me.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and much appreciated. It's always great chatting with you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Always fun.
Yeah,
thank you so much. And tell your wife thanks for that update. Made my night.
Yeah. All right.
Have
Thanks
a happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Well, everyone, we have come to the end of another awesome segment. That was super interesting because it's content that is real close to home, obviously for us. So it's always nice to hear what's going on with local authors and so on. Tomorrow night, Daryl Denton joins us for the very first time. The Tennessee Bigfoot Man will be joining the show. He's going to be discussing his research and experiences with Bigfoot and Dogman within probably one of the most aggressive areas that I've read about, the land between the lakes. It has a history of aggressive encounters with both cryptids, and it's not ended well for some folks that are in there. And people have asked, why do we talk about land between the lakes? Well, this just happens to be in Daryl Denson's pretty much backyard. So we are going to be tackling that. So big thank you to all of you in chat. Big thank you to Brian Baker. Big thank you to Folgers, Justin Snickers, Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so very much. You have been listening to the Outer Realm Radio on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We shall see you all tomorrow night. Good night.